Well, folks, it finally happened. I was going to say it wasn't going to happen this year, and I tell you what, it really barely did happen here. But the Russian Zion finally paid off a little bit. I've had 6 swarms that I can count this year off of this little apiary, these 4 hives. And most of the swarms, when they took off, they landed back behind the hives here to the north. I had one in the bush and about 3 or 4 over here on these autumn olive trees, and even a couple up in the tops of them. And I began to think maybe that the Zion was not going to work. Part of it, though, I thought was maybe because when these hives swarmed, a lot of times it was a very windy days, and I wondered if that was maybe not why the swarms went to the north, because the wind was from the south, and the queen might have came out and the wind could have maybe blew her to the north, but that's where most of the hives swarmed and landed on their first stop. But this morning, it's July the 11th, I believe. My Layens hive here, it swarmed about a week ago, and I'm assuming that it's swarming again this morning with a secondary cast with a virgin queen. And currently she's gathering a few supporters, but not really very many. So I don't know if this is their first attempt to come out maybe and go back in, but I can honestly say a Russian Zion may work. This is a tiny little swarm it's going to be. And I ended up putting some burlap and old brown beeswax on this Zion here to get them to collect to. And I even earlier in the year put lemongrass and some cotton balls in some drilled holes to see if it might draw them to it. But like I say, this is a tiny little swarm. I don't even know if you fed it, if it would make it. Of course, they may collect a little bit more here as the morning goes on, but I have no place to really put it. So I'm probably going to just let nature take its course. Once again, the Zion may work. It's been sitting out since April, before April, I believe. I put it up, and it finally paid off, I guess. Next year, I may, for the heck of it, move it from this position back behind the hives to the north, just to see maybe if they may not have a better chance of landing on it than they did this year. So it's worth a try. It was fun to mess with and build, and I wish the swarm would be big enough that I would have put it in my bucket to collect and keep. I'll check back here in a couple hours just to see if they're still here, and it may be a little bit bigger. It's been a while since I made a video, but it's been an interesting bee season. I had a few early swarms at the very first of April, but they were kind of scattered and spread out. We had a lot of windy conditions. We had rain, we had a little warm weather, then cool weather. So I think the bees swarmed, but people just weren't seeing them. The bees probably clustered up overnight, and maybe they were a little harder to find. But it has been quite a strange year in the old bee yard when it comes to swarms. But here it is, July. Usually around here we'll have some early spring swarms, and then again by July, 1st of July, I'll have a few more. Folks, I couldn't help myself. This is the tiniest little swarm, but it does have a queen in it. But I just, for the heck of it, wanted to try it, putting it in my little bucket catch that I made for it. And I know where there's a hive that may have a failing queen. So I'm going to take it and maybe have to add this little tiny swarm to it. There is a queen in here again, but she is a virgin. And I'm going to try to do this one-handed here. Maybe I'm going to try to do it two-handed here. So in theory, this ought to work even for a bigger swarm, but what I'll do is just go ahead and hopefully easily put it down and snap the lid on, and there's a nice little bucket carry for a swarm. Like I said, I just couldn't help myself to try this out, and hopefully I've got a home for that little package there, little swarm of the queen to another hive. May God bless you all. I hope you have a good bee season and are able to harvest a good amount of honey.